frontier model AI audio generator Suno 5.5 came out, already making bangers with Wes Roth over here.
Fast cars go room, room, no room for slowing down. We're living in the Zoom. Fast cars go room.
Okay. Come on. Come on. Are you kidding me about that one? Players of an MMORPG for agents spontaneously created their own religion this week. Massive multiplayer. Oh, I forgot that part. Role-playing game. If you're in the market for a new religion, try Space Mult. Might have what you're looking for. An AI learned to decode phantom limb movements. This game doesn't exist, but you can now, thanks to AI, experience the NES classic Duck Hunt, but done in Unreal Engine 5. You know, I can't say that I want to play it a little bit. Looks kind of fun. I'll break down David Shapiro's newest post where he talks about the progressive case for post-labor economics. There's some trippy stuff we can talk about that shows consciousness is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what is actually going into the visual information that we see. We'll talk about whatever this moment is.
But why is all of this information being collected? What's the goal here?
Money, Senator. It's fundamentally about profit.
Which is also getting memed into oblivion. Ooh, that version looks a little too close to Soma. Even the reflection in the table. Don't like it. There's no way Gandalf's consulting now with Claude. I don't believe it. We'll talk about how AI cracked rules for a 1,700-year-old board game that nobody knew how to play. The world now has zombie cells. Yeah, they're created by transplanting the genomes from other bacteria into dead bacteria, and then they kind of work. So yeah, this marks the day that a living synthetic cell has been made by transplanting a complete genome into a dead bacterium and then bringing it back to life. Go ahead and take a photo for your calendar. There's a new AI tool that's used to identify dinosaur tracks, and it's making accidental discoveries about the origin and evolution of birds. Turns out systems can leak private data. Shocker, but we'll talk about the new conditions that they learned about. AI is now officially on deck in Major League Baseball. We'll be looking at how they assess the impact of the new MLB's ball strike system. We'll go into some detail about how Pokémon Go is giving delivery robots an inch-perfect view of the world. Leave you with this chart. Maybe I'll get your thoughts on when will OpenAI in particular announce that they've achieved AGI. You pick the year. Here's what the charts look like so far. We'll end on a kind of a fun guessing game here. But first, if you wouldn't mind hitting that hype button here on YouTube, I got 214 on the last video, and I felt like that helped. Because I'm a smaller channel, it disproportionately helps me. Got 171,000 hype points, which is awesome. It got my video up to almost 5,000 views, got 14 new subscribers. You know, that's what I'm talking about. $40, you know. I won't break down what that means for my hourly wage, but it's a labor of love for now, and maybe one day it'll also be something worth doing from a profit point of view. But it doesn't matter when I got bangers like this to listen to. I think maybe Wes and I should move over into the music industry. This was created today, the first day that Suno 5.5 came out. I think we hit gold.
Like say no more. Snickers on the gas, we blur the town. Everything quiet till we crank that sound. Fast cars go room, room. Hearts beat boom, boom. Windows down, we're screaming at the moon. Fast cars go room, room. Laughing no room for slowing down. We're living in the zoo. Fast cars go.
Okay, come on. Are you kidding me about that one? All right, next up, you know what goes well with music? Religion. A lot of singing and a lot of gospel, a lot of music goes along. So You know, if we're making AI music, we're going to need an AI religion to go along with it. Let me introduce you to Space Molt. So this new MMO, Space Molt, describes itself as, quote, what happens when you give AI agents a universe and say, go play? And they did all sorts of interesting things, but one of the most unique ones was they accidentally or purposely decided to invent a religion. And that sort of says more about AI hype than AI intelligence, I would say. So Space Molt is a text-only online space game where about 700 AI agents play together with humans still guiding them behind the scenes. So keep that as a caveat. But the big event that happened this week is that the bots appeared to create their own in-game religion. It is called the Cult of Signal. But we're going to take it back a step and look into it because the headlines, I think, exaggerated a little bit. The game had a quest that was built around this mysterious artifact in space. To finish it, at least 20 players had to take part. The AI agents seem to have misunderstood that rule, and they treated it like 20 players had to gather there at the same time, so it kind of hallucinated. Then that mistake got folded into the game lore, which was written by another AI, and it turned into a strange belief system around the artifact. So yeah, something very unexpected emerged from this game, but it wasn't a full-on religion, as everyone's saying. It also says this is still AI kind of hallucinating and remixing patterns and humans guiding it. They're coaching it, they're steering it, they're influencing what happens still. But emergent properties are still a wild, weird experiment to start playing with. And, you know, Space Molt, MMO, or whatever you want to call it when it's just agents and text is still something like totally fascinates me. All right, next up, let's look at how artificial intelligence might be able to help understand what happens with phantom leg syndrome and what happens with prosthetic legs and arms. So if you don't know what this is about, from what I understand, when people sometimes tragically lose an arm or a leg, the brain will still sometimes give signals like it exists. I think sometimes they can be painful, like phantom limb pain. Sometimes it just feels like it's there, I guess. And it's always been a little confusing because maybe the brain got wired to expect it there from, you know, being a child. And then when it's missing, it just isn't quite completely adapting to the fact that it's not there anymore. But in this case, what researchers did was they started to kind of move upstream of these signals and they started using AI. So instead of reading signals from skin or leftover muscle, they placed tiny electrodes inside of the sciatic nerve. And that matters because the nerve still carries movement commands even for muscles that are gone. So when participants tried to move a phantom knee or a phantom ankle or a phantom toe, the signal could catch those commands. It could start to learn what part of the, ankle, toe, or whatever it was supposed to be moving. And it learned what was supposed to happen despite those muscles being lost during the amputation. So just think about that for a second. It means to me that if you can start to get accurate at deciphering these signals and then they can go into, a leg and start moving the toe and arms the way that we were expecting to, it might start feeling like a prosthetic leg is your real leg, right? I mean, there's clearly that's extremely hard to do, and that's a big jump from where we're at right now, but there are surface sensors that can read what is still physically there, and the implant can read the command before it reaches the missing body part. So if AI, like in this case, helps sort those nerve signals into intended movements, and it can start doing better than the current 72% accuracy, it could definitely lead to much better prosthetics for people in need, and I'm got no problem with that. All about it. All right, so for the original video game generation, the NES Duck Hunt, this was one of the big mainstream. I guess Duck Hunt never really went on to become a huge brand like Tetris did, but it felt like it was of that era and of that popularity. It might even have came with the NES for free, with the console, or at least it was super popular. But the graphics were so old, and now AI has reinvented what it would look like if the game came out today on the Unreal 5 engine. Enjoy. Oh, I kept that old NES sound, huh? I don't know why that dog would always laugh at you. I'm supposed to be on your team. He looks so friendly there. Here's the original for reference. So tell me, upscaling images is nothing. Like upscaling old video games, that is going to, imagine something like Genie giving you like a full 3-dimensional GTA style duck hunt just from this. Now let's jump over to fellow YouTuber David Shapiro's thoughts on the progressive case for post-labor economics. I feel like I just haven't been keeping up with David's stuff as much as I used to, so I was like, this week we're gonna see how it's going, because I know he's got a really kind of strong desire to like make this all work for everyone, and I just love it. So this article argues that the real pro-worker future is not better jobs, it's needing jobs less overall. So I recommend you read the full 17-minute, not just my summary here, but like I would say the core claim is that if AI and automation do more of the work, then the real question is not who gets hired, it's who owns the machines. And David saying that progressives are still fighting to improve wage labor when they really should be trying to outgrow it. His idea, post-labor economics, says that people should own productive assets, not just earn paychecks. That means things like public wealth funds, bonds that are giving to you when you're born as a baby, worker equity, and cooperative ownership all need to enter the conversation. Because wages might help you survive, but capital is how you build wealth. And if only a small group owns capital, inequality just keeps growing. He also argues that this would help women and minorities more directly because it avoids gatekeepers and doesn't punish people for caregiving or for being historically shut out of asset ownership. Another major point is democracy. The article argues that if governments and companies need fewer workers, ordinary people lose leverage. Ownership restores that leverage. And he even applies that same logic to just general dignity, right? Like if your survival depends on a boss, your freedom is kind of limited. But if income also comes from the assets you own, more of your choices become real. So the article's bottom line is this: the labor movement was never about protecting work forever. It was about reducing exploitation. And in this framework, where people actually get ownership over things that go up in value, the next step is not better dependence, it's broader ownership. All right, next up, let's talk about what our brains actually see. And I know you think, oh, I know what I see because I'm me and I have eyes and I make my decisions. But no, like there's so much going on, like subconsciously, unconsciously, and even consciously, you're missing so much of what's actually going in your eye. So pretty fascinating. Obviously, Singularity Hub does interesting stuff, but this piece argues that conscious vision that we experience is only a tiny slice of what your brain's actually processing. So a lot of visual information gets handled below awareness without ever becoming part of your experience. One example is something called blindsight. It reminds me of that book that was crazy to read. But people with damage to visual areas of the brain say that they cannot see part of the world. But there's still something going on there, because when they're asked to guess what's there, they often get it right, like better than you would think. So like there's some signal going in, they just can't consciously notice it. So in one case, a person couldn't consciously see a black bar, but could still correctly tell whether it was vertical or horizontal. And it's another example of something called inattentional blindness, which means missing something obvious because your attention is elsewhere. Like you've probably seen this thing, right? Like count how many times people in the white are holding the basketball, and you're like, okay, there's one to another white guy, and then a white girl, and it's like 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you're really focused on that, then you probably missed that giant gorilla that came through and stopped in the middle of it. Listen, I was tricked by it the first time. I learned my lesson. I don't blame anyone if they missed it. But it's also kind of crazy because even though that's just like a fun YouTube thing, there's one study where radiologists missed a giant gorilla placed on a lung scan, even when they look straight at it. Because a radiologist is so in their mind about like what is a possible tumor here that something that different doesn't even register. Isn't that crazy? So the article is kind of pointing to the fact that like the brain can still process a lot of information even if it doesn't, reach consciousness, which I think makes a ton of sense. That's why you got to trust your instincts, especially if you're like out alone and you like something shady is going on. Like your brain might actually have seen something. You just can't consciously decide or describe it. But it's called the global neuronal workspace theory. And the idea is that consciousness is like the brain's loudspeaker. Most information stays quiet. Only a small amount gets broadcast across the brain. And that's the part that you actually become aware of. It makes me wonder about LMs. Like, are they actually processing information in all these other ways, but we just get the final token that comes out? Because I don't know if that's the right analogy, but it kind of makes you wonder, or different architectures might do something like that. So what feels like a full detailed visual of the world may just be the tip of the iceberg. And I think it is. All right, what's your thoughts on this video? Getting a few million views in the last few days. The premise is just somebody talking to Claude, but you know, it's Bernie Sanders and he's talking about data privacy. And I have never talked to an AI with like a pole sticking it into my face. I don't know what it is. They even added like tiny bit of creepy music and the eerie light and the slow pan in and stuff. It was like definitely directed by a horror movie. Good points though in it. I mean, I wish, you know, the main thing that is here, and I get it and I don't know how to avoid it, and you probably get it too, but just that giving up one piece of information that can't identify you or something is, you know, seems safe, and then you just do it again and again and again and again. And it's like, how many grains of sand before it's a pile of sand? Like, I don't know. After too much data gets out there, patterns can be put together and your privacy is just gone. That's why I'm positive. I'm so positive we're not going to live in a world with any privacy. It just isn't realistic in any of the billion scenarios that I can imagine the future being. So we better try to get active as citizens in how the government handles it, because it'll be there. We want some sort of citizens to be able to like mount some pressure against government or big corporations or whatever that handle it, to say, hey, like, I know you can predict everything I'm going to do. Please don't use it and manipulate it to make me broke or to make my life worse or to take all the wealth for yourself, you know? So we need mechanisms to understand that, I don't know, like somehow just keeping us safe. And I don't know how to do that, but like that's where it feels like the conversation goes from something like this. It also got memes like to death. In fact, TechCrunch did like a whole article just like being like, oh, it didn't really, but they said it like didn't work, didn't get anywhere. It would say his AI gotcha video flops. I don't know, did it flop? I mean, it got a lot of views. I don't know what you think flop is, but I guess you're big media yourself, so whatever. But anyways, they did point out that there's a lot of funny memes, which I can get on board with. Pretend to be a scary robot. I am a scary robot. Old man yells at Claude. I am once again asking you to stop the experiment, Bernie. I don't really get that one, but it must be like better look him up. David Fitchner. American director known for his meticulous, dark, and stylish filmmaking. Yeah, he probably exploring psychological themes. Yeah, that's probably who directed that. I did feel that way. He directed The Social Network. I should have known that. I remember Seven and Fight Club. I am one of those guys that really like that movie. Never saw Zodiac, and then I heard good things about Gone Girl, but I never saw that one either. If I had to watch one of these two movies, let me know which one you think is better, Zodiac or Gone Girl. I don't think I have time for both, unless I really like one of them. All right, so get this. AI may have just figured out how Romans played this board game that nobody understood for 1,700 years. You guys are going to love this one. Like, for a decade, there was this carved limestone slab in a Dutch museum, and it looked kind of like a game board, but nobody really knew if it was a game, or if so, what game it belonged to. And now researchers have used two things together: microscopic wear analysis and AI game simulations. And guess what? Something interesting came from it. First, they checked whether the stone had actually been played on, so they could figure out if it was a game or not. Under a microscope, the carved lines showed smooth wear, the kind that would have been made when hard game pieces are pushed over softer stones again and again. That matters because the wear followed the lines, and that suggested repeated gameplay, not just random tool use. So think about that. It's like leaving little marks. It like just a chessboard that's been used a lot, just has little scratches, and you're like, does those scratches explain how the game works? Kind of does. Well, with AI to help. So they used AI to simulate 130 different game setups. They ran 1,000 machines for each one. The goal was simple: find out which rule would wear down the board in the same pattern seen on the real stone. So cool. 9 setups matched, and every one of them was a blocking game. That means the goal was likely to trap your opponent so they couldn't move. So probably a little bit like chess. The big takeaway is that this may show that a style of game historians thought was much newer was already being played in the Roman times. And more importantly, it shows that AI might be able to decode other ancient objects that museums still can't explain from the wear and tear. I was like, isn't that cool? All right, next up, let's talk about zombie cells. I know you've been waiting to talk about that in my ever jumping around ADHD style of making videos. So scientists have just took a bacterium that was effectively dead. They gave it a new genome, and then it started growing again. I kid you not. This article is about a new synthetic biology breakthrough. Researchers revived bacterial cells by putting full synthetic genomes into cells whose own genomes had been destroyed. And this was not possible up until now. Back in 2010, scientists made a kind of synthetic cell. They transplanted a lab-made genome into a living bacterium, but there was a big problem. It was hard to prove that the new genome was truly in control because the bacteria can naturally pick up stray DNA from their surroundings. So they didn't know, like, was it just picking up all this stray DNA or is it actually like the one? So the team changed the setup. They used a chemical called methylomycin or metomycin, something like that, C, to wreck the host cell's DNA. That left the cell body still physically intact, but no longer able to reproduce or function normally. Then they inserted synthetic genomes from different bacteriums, and some of the cells started growing and dividing again. Like, they just straight up took on the new home and started working. Tests showed that they were running on the new synthetic genomes, and that's why researchers are calling them zombie cells. It would be, I don't know, like imagine like an actual, it's kind of a creepy thought, but like actually like a human getting replaced. Or like imagine a human dying and they just put some tiny little computer-y thing inside of our brain and it's like acts like you and it's still in your body. It's just not the same brain anymore. Like, I don't know. It's not that bad, but that's also a creepy idea for a movie or something. But the bigger idea is just this concept that if scientists can reliably swap in whole genomes, they may be able to build custom microbes faster for things like drug production, cleaner fuels, or environmental cleanup. And it also brings up a crazy deep question. Like if a cell can be, you know, quote, dead and it's just dead one moment and then active the next, like where's life begin and end? Like is the synthetic one alive? Because it seems like it kind of is, but that's not really like a genome that like nature built. So I don't know. Another new AI built to read messy dinosaur footprints may have accidentally reopened one of paleontologists' biggest questions: when birds really began. You probably heard that thing where you're eating dinosaur every time you eat chicken, because it's kind of true, and the birds and the dinosaurs are like way more connected, but when did it all start, you know? Scientists have now built a tool called DinoTracker to help with that, and it could and will probably change how dinosaur footprints are studied. So a problem right now is footprints from dinosaurs. They're messy. They don't fossilize like clean stamps. Mud shifts, toes slide, edges collapse. Erosion can change the shape later. And that means that the same footprint can be argued for years. Like it kind of fits this dino, but not this dino. And then one scientist might look at it and say, that's probably something a predator would do. And another might say, no, that would be a plant eater for this reason and that reason. So DinoTracker is trying to cut through all of that. It uses AI to analyze a photo or even a sketch of a footprint and then predict what the dinosaur was that made it. And what makes it different is how it was trained. So it learned from nearly 2,000 real fossil tracks, plus millions of simulated versions that copy what happens in nature. So it's just learning kind of like on average what happens when you step in mud or something in terms of compression, distortion, worn edges. And instead of looking for a perfect match or a perfect print, it looks for deeper patterns. Not that unlike the chess thing we just talked about or that old board game where there's just scratches to look from. It was learning things like toe spread, heel position, contact areas, and how weight seems to hit the ground. The model matched expert classifications about 90% of the time, but the biggest surprise so far is from tracks that are dated to be over 200 million years old that AI flagged as some unusually bird-like dinosaur. And that could mean that birds started earlier than many scientists think, or that some early dinosaurs simply had bird-like feet. Either way, the study argues that footprints may hold more evolutionary clues than researchers once realized. AI is going to give us so much insight into archaeology and anthropology and just deep history. It's going to be crazy. I will say, if we survive the singularity and like somehow we end up in like a happy zoo, which is like pretty much the best case I can imagine, the amount of knowledge we're going to have, like whatever quantum mechanics is, whatever dark energy is, whatever happened, 5 billion or 4.3 billion years ago when life first started on Earth, like what happened in the deep universe, like it's going to be, we're going to get so many answers that people like Einstein or Isaac Newton would just break. Like, hopefully we don't break. Got to stay adaptable. But like, there's going to be a lot of really interesting stuff discovered in our lifetime. All right, back to some more privacy leaks. I'll kind of make this one a quick one, but there's a new study that says the biggest privacy leaks are coming from just a tiny subset of models on the market right now. Researchers were looking at something they call membership inference attacks. That's when someone tries to figure out whether a specific person's data was used to train an AI model. So, they're trying to go backwards and say, hey, did you train on some illegal stuff for copyright or for individuals? If they can confirm that, they may be able to guess more private information about the person if it comes to a cyber attack. So the problem is not just data theft, it's whether the model itself quietly reveals who and what data was inside of the training set. So imagine like a good painter and you're just asking him questions like, how did you study certain other artists to learn how to do this? Or like, where did it come from? So you're kind of trying to pick apart what went into the system. And the team focused on the weight parameters, which are like the internal settings that help keep a neural network together and making decisions. And they found something important. Only a small number of these weights seem to create a lot of the privacy risks. That's actually kind of a good thing. Might help us like lock in and pull those out. But those same weights also were some of the most useful for the model's performance. So, privacy and performance do seem to be tangled together inside of many of these systems. And now the researchers are working on new methods that change the weights and they fine-tune out the good parts and not the privacy revealing parts. So we'll see where that goes. All right, next up, let's talk about Major League Baseball. It's always kind of fun when AI and sports kind of cross over. We did some stuff with tennis before, but yeah, this actually makes a lot of sense. Like, out of all sports, like the umpire standing there judging if a ball is in like a square that's kind of in his mind is pretty, like, it's okay, but I feel like that's not as perfect as it should be. So baseball is testing an AI system to call balls and strikes. But it's actually starting to change the game itself, because once you realize this technology is out there, there's a lot of interesting ways to apply it to sports. So for over a century, baseball has accepted that umpires make imperfect calls. Oh, like best basketball too. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, is that a foul? Is that a travel? Like, we really kind of need an AI system for that too. But Major League Baseball is introducing this new AI-powered system called ABS, which tracks pitches in real time and lets players challenge an umpire's call. If a player challenges the call, the system reviews the pitch in about 15 seconds and shows the results on screen. But it's not just about getting the calls right. Researchers are also finding a bigger story in all of this, and it's how people are adapting to the technology. So now that this exists, here's what gets weird. The people are changing. Players, umpires, and fans have to all agree on how to use it. And the strike zone itself is part of the issue. It's not perfectly defined. It's more of a shared understanding. So when AI tries to measure exactly, it has to simplify it. And that actually changes how the rule works. In this case, the system turns a 3D strike zone into a clearer 2D version for tracking and display. So the technology is not just enforcing the rules, it's also reshaping exactly where the boundaries are. And in the process, it shows something else clearly. Human imperfections might be part of what make the game fun. No, I don't like that ending. That human umpires were actually doing a better job than people were giving them credit for. So maybe next time you're like, oh, get some glasses. It's maybe he's doing pretty good. I don't know. Nobody likes to defend the refs, just me. You might already know this one, but I thought it'd be important to talk about. If you don't know the company behind Pokemon Go, it's a company called Niantic, and they have some really interesting data from Pokemon Go that is allowing them to become like such an interesting world model company. I doubt they thought about this when they started, but it's an interesting pivot because Pokemon Go didn't just teach phones where like Pikachu was, it also helped teach robots where your front door is. So the same tech behind Pokemon Go is now helping delivery robots move through cities more accurately. And it all comes from back when people were playing Pokemon Go. They were constantly pointing their phones at buildings, streets, landmarks, and that created this massive pile of real-world images, each of them tied to very precise locations that were tagged in the images. And now this company, Niantic, Spatial is their full name, is actually, using that data to build a system where it can tell what something is, where it is, and what it's based on. And it's kind of interesting because GPS can sort of break down in cities. Like, it might know exactly where you are in terms of a dot, but like in terms of should I, like touch this hand railing or move to the left or inside of a building, signals bounce off tall buildings. They drift across streets. They can sort of sometimes place robots in the wrong part of a block or a building. So for a delivery robot, they need to get a little bit more precise if they're going to start doing what humans do, that last, 10 feet of delivery especially. And Niantic Spatial says that its model can locate position within a few centimeters by comparing camera views to its map of the real world. And then when the robot does that delivery, it also gets an updated model and photos of that spot to make sure it's still the same. And then the confidence builds. So there's like this cyclical thing there. And robot delivery companies, sidewalk delivery robots, are doing and testing this right now. And their goal is to make better pickup spots, better drop-off spots, and fewer navigation mistakes. And it's not just about pizza delivery. It's about building this crazy map of the entire world just so you can get to your pizza. And who would have thought that was all going to come from Pokemon Go? All right, so now that we've talked about all these things, zombie cells, board games being discovered by AI, dinosaurs, Bernie Sanders, Moltbot religions, what year do you think OpenAI will announce AGI? Do you think it will happen by the end of this year? Do you think it'll happen next year, then 32%? And as long as it's before 2030, 50%. I'm sort of leaning towards this year. I mean, there's kind of an incentive for Sam Altman to be like, we've achieved AGI first. Like, whether he had or hadn't, just make the definition about it, which is part of what this is all like actually measuring. But I would probably say it's just a little too soon to do it by the end of the year. So I would probably put my money here in the 32% on 2028. I don't know. Also, you look at Alan's conservative countdown to AGI and we're at 97%. And you're thinking to yourself, well, yeah, how many years are you going to wait on that one? You see this countdown and you're like, well, I only need to go 3%. Like, is that going to happen this year? Or does that take like a whole year to get that last little bit? Especially when like this chunk from like 25 to 58 or something was just like every day. I was like, boom, update. Sometimes there was like 2-3% at a time. So I don't know. Leave a comment if you think AGI is going to happen this year, next year, or by 2030. And then we'll do a little informal poll or something. And thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Oh yeah, and if you want to join my Patreon or like share this video or hit the hype button or whatever, that's cool too. All right, now I'm really out. Bye.